this hoe, it does more than dig the earth. It holds the roof above us. It keeps the meals on our table. It protects my love. The very first sound of dawn was the sharp strike of the hoe breaking into the soil. Thud, thud, firm and unyielding. Through the morning mist, John Miller, a poor farmer, bent low, his back soaked with sweat. His calloused hands gripped the wooden handle tightly. Every swing was a vow, a battle against hunger. On the ridge of the field, Mary, his wife, balanced two heavy wooden buckets. Water spilled over, streaming down her thin legs. Her shoulders trembled, yet her eyes shone with determination. She set the buckets down and exhaled. John, stop for a while. The land will still be there. But you, there is only one of you. John lifted his head and smiled. His sun-darkened face, framed by haze, still carried warmth in his eyes. As long as I can hold this hoe, our table will never be empty. They were poor. Their home was only a mud-walled hut with a tattered straw roof. Meals were often nothing more than thin porridge with a few wild greens. Yet inside that hut, they had each other. Many times, Mary whispered, I do not fear poverty. I only fear losing you. The small village lay between forest and fields. People toiled all year, yet still lived in want. But there was one man so wealthy that the whole village bowed its heads in his presence. Richard Brown, a landlord. He owned hundreds of acres of land, bursting granaries, and strong herds of oxen and horses. His face always carried arrogance, and his voice cut like a blade. In this region, the rice belongs to me. The poor survive only on what falls from my grain. The villagers feared Richard, but John did not. He knew that. Though poor, he still had his hands and a patch of hard soil. One afternoon, as Mary went to the well for water, Richard appeared. His shadow stretched long across the damp bricks. In his hand was a brilliant red silk dress. The fabric shimmered like fire. He held it out, his voice dripping with honey. Mary, you are beautiful. Too beautiful to be hauling water and wearing patched rags. That poor husband of yours, what does he have? Dry soil, a crumbling hut. Come with me, silk, gold, silver, the entire village will bow to you. Mary's face went pale. She startled and stepped back. I have a husband. I cannot. Richard laughed with scorn. A husband, a pauper, and you think poverty can hold a wife. Think, Mary, think about your future. He placed the dress on the edge of the well and walked away. His words lingered, sharp as knives. Mary looked at the dress. It blazed red, so unlike the faded brown cloth on her body. Her hands trembled, her heart raced. She hurriedly lifted the buckets and returned home. Yet inside her, a seed of doubt had been sown. That night, John sat mending an old shirt. The dim oil lamp cast shadows across his face. He did not notice Mary sitting nearby, her eyes fixed on the thread, her heart in turmoil. She still loved her husband, but the image of the red dress kept returning, like a spark licking at dry thatch. The next day, the village buzzed with whispers. Mary is truly beautiful. If she wore that silk dress, she would look like a queen. And John, just a bent-back farmer. Mary heard it, and her heart ached. A ringing filled her ears. She walked home quickly, shoulders heavy. John noticed her troubled face. He set down his hoe, came closer, and held her hand. Mary, I have no gold or silver, only these hands. But I swear, I will do everything to keep you happy. Mary nodded, her lips trembling. Yet as he turned away, tears slipped down her cheeks. In her mind, Richard's voice echoed. And you think poverty can hold a wife? From that day, their mud hut was not the same. Mary smiled less. She often sat by the doorway, gazing toward Richard's lush green fields. John labored harder, but each strike of the hoe weighed heavily on his chest. One morning, when Mary returned to the well, the silk dress was again waiting on the stone rim. No one stood nearby, only a faint scent of perfume lingering in the air. She froze. Her hands shook, her eyes blurred. She wanted to walk away, but her feet clung to the ground. Her heart pounded violently. The vision of herself wearing that dress, standing proudly in the village, flashed before her and then vanished. That afternoon, as she returned, John asked, "Why are you late?" Mary hesitated, then shook her head. "No, nothing." The short words fell heavy as stones. John saw the change in her eyes. A chill swept through his heart. He knew something had come between them, something dangerous, and indeed, it had. A turning point had arrived. In their poor home, where trust once lived, a shadow had fallen. One silk dress, one taunting voice, and a thin crack, small, yet enough to shake the very core of their love. In the village, everyone loved to gossip. From the day the red silk dress appeared by the well, Mary's story spread everywhere. People pointed, whispering, "So beautiful, yet she still carries water. Put that dress on, and she looks like a lady." And John, with patched clothes and calloused hands, can he really keep his wife? Mary walked past, her cheeks burning. She tried to ignore it, but each word sank in like a thorn. The first trial, the silk dress. Richard was clever in planting his seeds, day after day. The dress appeared again, sometimes dangling from a tree branch, sometimes draped across the fence, sometimes lying right at her doorstep. The villagers saw it, giving them even more to talk about. One evening, Mary could not endure it any more. She clutched the dress and ran to the riverbank. The water was dark and thick, rippling with tiny waves. She hurled it with all her strength. The red fabric sank slowly, drifting away. But her heart did not feel lighter. Instead, an icy emptiness spread through her chest, as though she had just lost something that was meant to be hers. Inside the hut, John still sat sewing a torn shirt. The needle pricked his hand, blood beading up, but he made no sound. Mary stared at the flickering oil lamp, her chest tightening. The image of the blazing red dress would not leave her mind. John gripped his wife's hand, his voice hoarse yet resolute. "I don't have silk or finery, only these hands, but I swear we will never starve." Mary forced a smile. Yet when she turned away, a tear rolled down her cheek. The second trial, the golden bracelet. Richard changed tactics. One morning, he strolled boldly into their hut and set a gleaming golden bracelet on the rotting wooden table. The glow filled the dim house. "Wear this, and you will no longer be a water carrier. Just one bracelet can trade away a lifetime of hardship." Richard narrowed his eyes, his voice sweet as honey mixed with poison. Mary froze. The bracelet was too beautiful, too extraordinary. Her hands, marked daily by the carrying pole, trembled with the urge to touch it. But before she could, John swept his arm and flung it aside. The bracelet clattered across the ground. "We don't need it," John growled, his eyes blazing. Richard laughed, raising his head high. "You only think that, but the bracelet will remain in your wife's mind. The day will come when she chooses." He left, his mocking laughter echoing behind. Mary whipped around to her husband, eyes brimming with tears. "You think I want it? Do you look down on me?" John said nothing, only held her close. But inside Mary, the golden glow lingered. At night, she stared at her bare wrist, imagining the bracelet circling her skin. She sighed. Her heart was torn between love for her husband and a yearning for luxury. The third trial, the instant harvest. Richard decided to strike the final blow. He hired a sorcerer from afar who carried a pouch of strange powder. At night, they secretly scattered it across the fields. The next morning, the entire village was in shock. The land that had been cracked and barren yesterday is now swathed with green rice stalks up to the knee, lush and promising a rich harvest. Villagers crowded to see, mouths agape, buzzing with endless chatter. Richard stood proudly among them, seizing Mary's hand and pulling her forward. "Do you see I have power? I can turn dry soil into golden fields. And your husband, he only knows how to bow his head over barren earth. Come with me, and you will be fed forever." The crowd murmured, "It's truly a miracle. Maybe Mary will go with Richard." Mary trembled. In her mind, 3 images whirled: the red silk dress, the golden bracelet, and the verdant field. Richard's words echoed like a spell. "Can poverty ever hold a wife?" That night, Mary broke down in tears. She looked at her husband and cried out, "You promised to provide for me. But look, our home is empty, our land cracked, and him, in just one night, he has green fields." John was struck silent, his rough hands clenched until blood welled beneath his nails. His vision blurred, his lips quivered. "Mary, I am sorry, I am powerless." Mary turned away, her face wet with tears. Her heart was torn apart, love on one side, the longing for a new life on the other. The villagers whispered, "Mary cannot endure this much longer. What marriage can withstand trials of silk, gold, and magic grain?" Richard exulted, throwing back his head in laughter. He knew Mary had walked nearly the full path he had laid out, from resistance to doubt to reproach. John was drowning in despair. The more he struggled, the deeper he sank. Late at night, the moon hung high. John sat alone in the field, his shadow stretching across the cracked earth. On one side, Richard's field shimmered with green waves of rice. On the other hand, his own field lay barren, only a few weeds scattered about. He thrust his hoe into the soil, gripping it tight, his eyes burning red. His voice broke out, like a cry for help. "Heaven above, I do not ask for silk or gold. I only beg to keep my wife, to keep my home. Please show me a way." The cold wind rushed through, carrying his plea into the sky. The darkness swallowed every sound. And at that very moment, another turning point was quietly drawing near. The night was dark, and the wind howled endlessly. John sat alone in the field. The ground was dry and cracked, with only sparse weeds clinging on. Across from him, Richard's field was lush and green, waves of rice rippling under the moonlight. That shimmering sight stabbed John's eyes like a blade. He gripped the handle of his hoe, his hands trembling violently. "Dear heaven, I don't ask for gold or silver. I don't ask for silk or riches. All I ask is to keep my wife. Just give me a path forward." His voice was hoarse, nearly breaking into sobs. His plea was carried away by the wind. Suddenly, a figure appeared, an old man with a silver beard, wearing coarse cloth, leaning on a bamboo cane. His eyes shone like stars. He stopped before John, smiling kindly. "I heard your voice. You do not ask for wealth, only to keep your home. That is honesty of heart. Then I shall give you a seed. Plant it in your field, and tomorrow morning you will see a miracle. But remember, the magic will only grow if your heart remains pure." John's hands shook as he received the tiny seed. no bigger than a bean. He bowed deeply, tears falling onto the dry earth. At dawn, when the rooster crowed, John went to his field. He dug a small hole, placed the seed inside, and covered it with soil. His hands clenched, his lips whispered, "I do not ask for riches. I do not ask for glory. All I ask is to keep love." At once, the ground trembled. A green sprout burst forth, reaching upward, then another, until the entire field sprang to life. In just a few moments, the barren land turned into a sea of green rice. Leaves stretched tall, stalks bent heavy with golden grain, shimmering like jewels. Villagers rushed over, their eyes wide with wonder. They shouted in amazement, "A miracle! John's field grew rice overnight. Heaven blesses the honest man." The air was filled with joyous cries. The news spread across the village and even reached Mary's ears. Mary ran to the field, panting. When she saw the sight before her, she froze. Tears welled up and streamed down her face. She fell to the ground, covering her face with her hands. "John, I doubted you. I blamed you. But the truth is, you are the one who kept the miracle alive. A miracle born from a pure heart. I was wrong." John lifted his wife to her feet and held her tightly. His voice choked as he whispered, "We still have each other, and that is enough." Mary sobbed against her husband's chest. All the torment and suspicion dissolved into the wind blowing over the rice field. But Richard refused to accept defeat. When he heard the news, his face turned purple with rage. He roared, "Impossible! That wretch is poor and worthless. How could he have magic rice?" He dragged his gang of thugs with him. His eyes burned red, his mouth foamed with fury. When he saw the flourishing field, he bellowed and charged forward. "This rice is mine. All this land must belong to me." But the moment he set foot in the field, the rice transformed. Each stalk turned into sharp thorns. They wrapped tightly around Richard's legs, stabbing deep into his flesh. Blood gushed out. He screamed and thrashed. But the more he struggled, the tighter they bound him. His men panicked and fled. The villagers stood around, but none stepped forward to help. Instead, they shouted, "Those who sow evil will reap evil. Greed only brings ruin." Richard writhed and wailed, then collapsed, his body torn to shreds. He was dragged out of the field, humiliated, bloodied, and finally banished from the village. From that day on, no one ever saw him again. As for John and Mary, they were respected by all. Their rice field became a source of life for the whole community. The grain never ran out. Season after season, it was heavy with harvest. Villagers lined up to receive their share, and no one ever went hungry. Children ran freely, laughing and singing. Do not crave silk, do not crave gold. Believe in the heart. Mary stood in the middle of the field, her hair blowing in the wind, her eyes glistening. She looked at John and softly said, "I have awakened. From now on, nothing can shake me again." John placed his hand on his wife's shoulder, smiling gently. "We have endured the trial. Now, as long as we are together, we have enough." The sun rose higher. Golden light spread across the fields. Waves of rice shimmered, like an endless golden sea. The story ends there, where a poor farmer proved that happiness does not lie in silk gowns, golden bracelets, or false enchantments. It lies in hands that labor, in a heart that stays true. The wicked were punished, the good found peace. And the lesson echoed through time: wealth may shine for a while, but love and purity are the light that never fades.